All right, John, are we all set?
You are set, sir, and live. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. I will now call to order Apex Town Council regular scheduled meeting for Tuesday, March 23rd, 2021. And I would like to thank those who have joined us on YouTube. And before we get started, let's do an official attendance roll call. And when I call your name, council members, please respond with here. Mayor Pro Tem Dozier.
Here.
Thank you. Council Member Killingsworth.
Here.
Okay. Council Member Gant.
Here.
Council Member Stallings.
Here.
And Council Member Mahaffey.
Here.
All right, great. We have a full council. And I would like to remind all council members when given a motion or second a motion, any motion, please be sure to say your last name during the roll call as well. So let's move now to our invocation. And tonight, what I wanted to do is acknowledge and talk about the situation, the tragic events that happened in Boulder, Colorado, as well as Atlanta, Georgia. And what I would like to do tonight is take a moment of silence to recognize the family, to show our love and support to those communities as well. So if you would, please join me in a moment of silence. Okay, thank you. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. If you would post a flag, please, staff. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you so much. All right, we'll now move to our consent agenda. We don't have any presentations tonight, so I will remind everyone that all consent agenda items are considered routine to be enacted by one motion with the adoption of the consent agenda and without discussion. If a council member requests discussion of an item, the item may be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. So I have not been made aware of any changes in the consent agenda, and if there are no changes in, I will accept a motion to approve the consent agenda as is.
Killingsworth, motion to accept the consent agenda.
Okay, is there a second?
Dozier, I'll second.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. All right, all in favor indicate by saying aye, opposed no. Mayor Pro Tem Dozier.
Aye.
All right, Council Member Killingsworth.
Aye.
Thank you. Council Member Gant.
Aye.
Thank you. Council Member Stallings.
Aye.
All right, and Council Member Mahaffey.
Aye.
All right, that passes unanimously. We're now moved to setting the meeting agenda. And I've been made of one change. We're going to have an add-on tonight for new business number 3, I believe it is. Notes here. And that is a possible motion to terminate an existing access easement presented tonight by Diane Ken. So with that change of the in the meeting agenda, if there are no other changes, I will accept a motion to accept the meeting agenda and approve it.
Motion approved, Gant.
All right, thank you. Is there a second?
Second at Stallings.
All right, thank you very much. All in favor indicate by saying aye, opposed no. All right, Mayor Pro Tem Dozier.
Aye.
Okay, Councilmember Killingsworth.
Aye.
Thank you. Councilmember Gant.
Aye.
Councilmember Stallings.
Aye.
And Councilmember Mahaffey.
Aye.
All right, that passes unanimously. We have a set agenda. All right, with that, we'll move to the first agenda item tonight, and that is public hearing 1, presented tonight by Shannon Cox, and that is public hearing of possible motion regarding proposed transportation plan amendments associated with rezoning 20CZ12, Felton Grove High School.
Good evening. The proposed amendments tonight are in relation to the next item on your agenda, so I just wanted to give you a heads up about that. The proposed school site is this rectangular parcel shown here. To orient you, this is Stevenson Road, which is our boundary with the town of Cary. And this is Sunset Lake Road, which is our boundary with the town of Holly Springs. The proposed amendments include removing the future east-west major collector street from Smith Road Extension over to existing Thriftwood Drive, removing the future minor collector street that would extend from the major collector down to Sunset Lake Road, removing the future minor collector street between Dairy Down Lane and Thriftwood Drive, and then removing the minor collector street designation on existing Arrowhead Drive. State law requires that for school sites, the town would need to reimburse the cost of construction for any of these roads shown on our long-range plans. And while our CIP does include funding to assist with roadway improvements for a possible school site, it does not contemplate the full funding that would be needed to build all of these future roadways. In addition, we anticipate that extending the major collector from the proposed school site over to Smith Road Extension would be very challenging, potentially unlikely to happen given that this is an inert debris landfill and future redevelopment will be limited. That's a similar situation for the future minor collector street. Without the minor collector street, it's just not logical to have the designation of Arrowhead Drive as a minor collector street. And then the removal of the future minor collector here is just consistent with the proposal to have this as a school site. These changes were reviewed with staff from Public Works and Transportation, Police, and Fire, and all recommended supporting these transportation plan amendments, noting that while it would be nice to have this major collector in the future, it is definitely not the highest priority project in this area. The Planning Board also reviewed these proposed amendments during their March 8th meeting and unanimously recommended approval. The next amendments are to the bicycle and pedestrian system plan map. For the most part, these are just consistent with the removal or proposed removal of future roadways on our plan. This reflects removing the future side path from the major collector street, the minor collector street here and here as well. The difference is a proposed addition of a future greenway that would extend from Smith Road Extension over to the proposed school site, as well as over to Middle Creek Greenway. This would provide for a future bicycle and pedestrian connection from the west to the proposed school, which is consistent with our Safe Routes to School objectives. Well, you don't see a connection from here over to Thriftwood. There are proposed zoning conditions that would provide for a pedestrian connection from the Greenway over to Thriftwood Drive, and you'll hear about that with your next agenda item. These were also reviewed with the same departments as well as Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Resources, and all were supportive of these proposed amendments. In addition, the Planning Board unanimously recommended these for approval as well. And I'm happy to try and answer any questions that you may have.
All right, no questions. All right. So Ms. Cox, is that all the information for that one?
That is all of the information, and I did not receive any public comments for the public hearing.
Okay, I'll go ahead and open up public hearing, and you just advised we didn't have any public comments, so we'll close it. And with that, there will be no vote tonight on any public hearing items. We have our meeting on Thursday, March 25th at 9 a.m. for official voting for this. So thank you very much. All right, so now we move to public hearing number 2, and that's Ms. Shelley Mayo presenting tonight. This is a rezoning application 20CZ12, Felton Grove High School.
I was muted, sorry. Good evening. Can you see the screen all right?
Yes, ma'am. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. As you said, the proposed rezoning is for Felton Grove High School. The high school is located kind of in the southeastern edge of the town's jurisdiction here in this general area. It consists of one parcel totaling about 68.06 acres. It's completely wooded with several perennial and intermittent streams throughout the site. It's located west of Stevenson Road here, at the end of Dairy Down Lane and Thriftwood Drive, and north of Sunset Lake to the south. It is west of the Briarwood Farms Mobile Home Park and north of the Indian Hills subdivision and the Triangle Forest Products landfill, formerly owned by the Current brothers. The adjacent landfill is a land clearing and inert debris landfill, which is defined as the UDO. And the UDO is a facility that consists of, or that disposes of solid waste that's generated solely from land clearing activities like stumps and trees, and inert debris like brick, rock, and concrete and clean soil. During the planning board presentation, the adjacent property owner asked if this particular project, if the school was actually going to follow the same guidelines that a new landfill would be required to follow if an existing school was adjacent to it. Typically speaking, those requirements are not interpreted that way. If an existing landfill is in an area and the school locates near it, it doesn't have to meet those same criteria because these are set up as supplemental standards for the landfill. However, because of the concerns that people understandably have about landfills and schools, staff went ahead and did an analysis. There's a section in the UDO that says that no part of a land clearing and inert debris landfill, its accessory ramps, on-site circulation system, or storage areas shall be sited within 250 feet of a school or other similar uses. Because of the the site for the landfill was approved by Wake County in 2003 and actually has 50-foot undisturbed buffers along the western or eastern and northern property lines. So here and here. So that sets back all of the active portions of the site by at least 50 feet. There's also a fence on that site plan that's 10 feet off of that undisturbed buffer, so that's 60 feet. And then along the southern portion of the school property, there's an intermittent stream that actually has a buffer of 50 feet on either side. So that's approximately 100 feet from that. Based on the analysis that staff did when combining those and measuring approximately where the active portions of the school would start, the site should meet that 250-foot separation with no problems. The applicant the property is currently zoned medium density conditional zoning, but it doesn't have school uses listed in those list of permitted uses. So the applicant is proposing to amend that zoning district to add those uses in so that a school could be built on this site. This is consistent with the 2045 land use map, which designates this site as a school. The applicant conducted a neighborhood meeting on October 27th, 2020. There was no one in attendance. The neighborhood meeting report is attached. And the school system is proposing the following uses for you. School, public or private. Communication tower, camouflage stealth. Communication tower, public safety. Wireless communication facility, wireless support structure, and church or place of worship. These are consistent with other schools in the town, and similar uses have been proposed on those as recently as the Apex Friendship Elementary School rezoning. The applicant's also proposing several conditions for you. I'll read those off for you. Condition 1, this project shall preserve trees measuring 18 inches in diameter at breast height or greater to the maximum extent reasonably possible. 2, in compliance with the UDO and to optimize the survival of landscaping, an extension of up to 6 months' time may be provided for installation of landscaping after a certificate of occupancy would otherwise be issued. 3, to support reestablishment of forest, a reforestation seed mix shall be used in disturbed areas with slopes of 3 to 1 or less, which are not located within RCAs or SCMs. To expedite growth and avoid erosion, a slope stabilizing mix with conservation seed mix shall be used on slopes greater than 3 to 1 but less than 2 to 1, which are not located within the RCAs and SCMs. The reason why we're excluding those two particular areas, the RCA and SCMs, is those have separate planting requirements within the UDO. Requiring these two seed mixes will allow additional vegetation to grow up, things that are not just grass, but the RCA is actually required to be planted with larger plants, and the SCMs have state mandated recommendations for those as well. Condition 4, this project shall dedicate a 20-foot on-site public greenway easement, and within it provide a 10-foot greenway path and or a 10-foot public sidewalk connection from the driveway connection at Thriftwood Drive, so in this general area, to the western property line along this side generally. 5, the project shall also provide off-site a combined greenway and sanitary sewer easement to accommodate future greenway construction by others. To comply with the town's standard specifications, the combined public utility and greenway easement shall be recorded providing no less than 30 feet in width or 10 feet beyond the minimum required for the sanitary sewer, whichever is greater. The public greenway easement shall extend from the western boundary of the site, in this general area, across the landfill site, roughly like this, to the landfill's eastern boundary, approximately here. Condition 6, the vehicular use area shading required in UDO section 8.2.5C is not required in the area between the parking deck and parking lot near the site's eastern boundary. Instead, the same number of trees required to meet this standard shall be planted elsewhere on site. The remainder of the site shall meet the requirements of the UDO to the maximum extent reasonably possible. Condition 7, the 2045 transportation plan shows a future north-south minor collector. If you recall from Shannon's diagrams, it starts here at Dairy Down Drive, extending north to the northern site boundary. This property shall provide half of the required 60-foot right-of-way as shown on the plan. Condition 8, improvements to the existing streets known as Thriftwood Drive, here, and Dairy Down Lane, here, identified as public streets having a 60-foot right-of-way in the Briarwood Farms subdivision map, which was recorded in Book of Maps, page 19, Book of Maps 1986, page 2149 in the Wake County Registry, shall be provided to satisfy such NCDOT requirements made upon the review of the traffic study for the project, which are minimally necessary to provide adequate public access as state-maintained roadways to Stevenson Road. Consequently, The existing streets known as Thriftwood Drive and Dairy Down Lane are not proposed for upgrades to meet Town of Apex standards, nor are they proposed for dedication to the Town of Apex. Condition 9, the northern perimeter buffer shall be a 20-foot type B buffer, so this general area, except where segmental retaining wall tiebacks would encroach. In those areas, it shall be no less than a 15-foot type A buffer. Condition 10, cast in place retaining walls shall be permitted within the western 20-foot type B buffer, as long as sufficient landscaping is planted around and on top of the walls to meet the requirements of the 20-foot type B buffer. Condition number 8 was proposed in order to avoid the town having to pay for requirements to roads that do not belong to us and that are not going to be dedicated to us. As Shannon mentioned during her presentation earlier, part of the reason why we were asking for the removal of the other roads from the town's 2045 transportation plan is because the town doesn't have the money planned in the CIP to fully pay for the construction of those roads. This is the first project that has come to us and required road improvements since the legislature changed the general statutes in 2017. We have had other schools get built and even rezoned, but this is the first one that required significant road improvements since that time. Apex Friendship Middle School actually was the last school that we had that required significant road improvements. That was approved in late 2015, early 2016. Apex High School was completely redeveloped and rebuilt, but the only frontage improvements that were really required was some sidewalk. So that was very minimal. And then Apex Friendship Elementary was recently approved, but all of the road improvements that were required for that school had already been completed with the high school and the middle school since they're on a shared site. So in order to make it clear that the town doesn't anticipate paying for any improvements on Thriftwood Drive or Dairy Down Lane, and that the school system is not intending to ask the town to pay for any such improvements, Condition 8 was crafted by town staff and in conjunction with the school board's representatives as well. Excuse me. In addition, the state general statutes governing rezoning regulations state that town regulations may not include as a basis for denying a zoning or rezoning request from a school the level of service of a road facility or facilities abutting the school or approximately located to the school. At this point, based on potential approval of the 2045 transportation plan amendments, access to the school will be via Stevenson Road through Thriftwood Drive and Dairy Down Lane. Stevenson belongs to NCDOT and is a rural 2-lane area. Thriftwood Drive and Dairy Down Lane are residential roads with drainage ditches on either side. Planning staff recommends the approval of this rezoning if the following condition is added. This condition is regarding the riparian buffer. A 100-foot riparian buffer shall be provided for all perennial streams in accordance with the requirements of UDO Section 6.1 as of August 3rd, 2020. As you know, in February 2022, the town's NPDES Phase 2 permit will expire. Unless it's renewed, our ability to enforce a 100-foot riparian buffer in the Big Branch and Middle Creek watershed basins will end at that time. This project is in the Middle Creek watershed basin. To mitigate this, we're requesting zoning condition for any rezoning in those two basins that will ensure a 100-foot buffer on perennial streams. Otherwise, the applicant might submit an amended subdivision or site plan to reduce the buffer to 50 feet. Given the concerns that Apex residents and council members have expressed regarding tree protection and environmental preservation, a zoning conditions currently our best tool to make the 100-foot buffer provided for all perennial streams in the future. To that end, planning and water resources staff are requesting this buffer condition on all zoning petitions within those two watershed basins. Planning board heard this at their March 8th meeting and unanimously recommended approval of the rezoning with the addition of the riparian buffer request. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. The applicant is also here as well.
Thanks, Ms. Mayo. Any questions from council?
Oops.
Councilmember Gant, yes, sir.
Ms. Mayo, you mentioned that the town has not had any experience with these school related road improvement requirements. Do you have any knowledge of other municipalities and how this issue has been dealt with and how needed road improvements have actually occurred in the future?
All of the information I have regarding that comes secondhand from my conversations with Wake County Public Schools. Ms. Betty Parker is the one who's provided that information to me, so she may actually be the best person to answer that question at the moment.
Yeah, I should have a second one. Thank you for that. This being kind of a regional project and its close proximity to other municipal boundaries, are you aware of anything in the UDO, or was there anything related to this project where there was outreach to Holly Springs and Cary and their staff or elected officials?
Not regarding to the best of my knowledge, I haven't heard of anything particular for this particular rezoning. I think that we may have, and Russell may need to confirm this, but I think that he may have had conversations with Cary's transportation department. And I know that when a property is annexed within a certain boundary, within a certain distance from the municipal agreement lines, that we have to notify them that those properties are being proposed for annexation. So I know that that has been done. I have not personally had any conversations with any other town departments, but it's possible that Russell has. I'll let him answer that if that's okay.
Yeah, NCDOT has met with Cary staff concerning the recommendations they made upon review of the TIA. We can't discuss the TIA tonight as part of the zoning because it's later, as part of the quasi judicial. But the Cary staff have been in communication. I'm not sure about Holly Springs.
Okay. Any other questions? Ms. Stallings, yes.
Yes, I don't know if Ms. Mayo or Ms. Parker can address this question. Is the plan from a capacity standpoint that the families of Apex would be primarily served by this school?
That is not something I can answer. I'll let Ms. Parker answer.
Shelley, would you like me to respond at this time or wait until I present what?
I'll leave that up to you. I said, Ms.
Sure.
Stallings, which would you prefer?
It doesn't matter to me, just as long as the question is addressed. If you'd
Sure.
rather wait, Ms. Betty, that's fine.
No, that's fine. I'm happy to help. Because the answer is I don't know. The assignment pattern is set about a year in advance of the school opening. Once it is factored into the broader assignment in the area, we just don't have the detail at this point to know with real accuracy exactly where it will be.
Okay. Any other questions? And Ms. Parker, if you want to go ahead and present, if Ms. Mayo is okay with that.
Sure. Thanks so much. And it's such a pleasure to be in front of you again today to discuss another new school in Apex. The site we're discussing today, as mentioned, is the site of the new Felton Grove High School. And just a bit about our schedule. We're hopeful that with approval tonight or soon and approval of the upcoming site plan that we'll be able to stay on course for a construction start in February of 2022 with an opening for the fall of 2024. I think it's always good to go back to sort of the beginning and what's been happening at Apex. What I've always said is everything that makes Apex so wonderful is what makes our job so difficult. The growth has been phenomenal. As a reminder, in the last 15 years, you've more than doubled in your population. There's been explosive growth in Western Wake County along the I-540 corridor and the Highway 55 corridor. In that time, we've built more than 2.4 million square feet to provide an extra 15,500 school seats. And yet, we're still overcrowded and outpaced. 26% of those seats were in Apex. And we see an even greater concentration coming over the next 5 years. Per our CIP, we're set to build another 1.3 million square feet in that western corridor. That'll provide another 6,400 seats. 55% of those will be in Apex. So we see your growth. We're responding as quickly as we possibly can. More about high schools. High schools have been a big challenge for us. There are 5 high schools along the western corridor that I took a quick look at our current utilization figures. When you consider Apex High, Apex Friendship High, Holly Springs High, Middle Creek, and Panther Creek, the overcrowding averages 120%, with Panther Creek at 144.9. The highest utilizations are your Apex Friendship High School and Panther Creek, unfortunately, both of which are capped. So with the development of this high school, we're able to bring 2,240 much needed seats right to the area where we have crowding and growth that's happening the quickest. So that's really our impetus here. That's really the urgency that we're feeling in bringing this to you. As Shelley mentioned, the site is already zoned appropriately. The only thing that's missing is the school use. The previous residential developer just narrowed the uses to match their intended development. So we're just seeking to add back the school use, which is typically, it is permitted without any additional special use permit required in this zoning normally. So we're bringing the school use back. There are a couple of quick points I wanted to touch on, and then I'm happy to answer any questions you have. The first is the requested riparian buffer that staff proposed. With all due respect, we have declined to offer the requested condition. And the reasons are fairly simple. We are absolutely fine offering conditions that provide more protections to the town than the UDO requires, or gives us a little flexibility where site constraints are necessary. That's what we have always envisioned the purpose of these conditions to be. What's unusual about the condition staff has requested is that it, in effect, requires us to codify as a rezoning condition what the UDO already says. Within a month or so, you'll be seeing a site plan, and it's going to be in compliance with the UDO. It's going to be in compliance with these riparian buffers. So for us to be bringing forward a plan that fully develops the site on this sort of time frame that I've mentioned earlier, we just don't see a need to further burden the property with a restriction. Science changes over time. When these buffer restrictions were first developed by the state and by the towns, we typically saw a 50-foot buffer envisioned as sufficient. We've seen that balloon to 100 feet to 150 feet in some towns. And with recent legislation, the science has slid back towards 50. I think we're concerned that if we stake out a particular number today, and in the future your UDO changes to require more, then we're hampered and restricted by what we've already agreed to, which gives you less than you want. If it shifts in the other direction, then the Board of Education, as a steward of taxpayer dollars, has encumbered its property beyond what's necessary. We feel like the safest thing is to let NCDEQ and the town of Apex allow its UDOs and regulations to flex with whatever the science is, so that we'll comply with whatever comes along. There's just to us, it's a bit of a reach to codify something that's already in place. I certainly understand the NPDES Phase 2 permitting status. It's interesting to note that it's already been renewed once, and we think the town has it within its capacity to renew it as needed. In the meantime, our site plan approvals, our construction document approvals, we expect will make their way through your processes before your current permit expires. So by the time we build a building and fully develop a site that we expect to stand for at least 50 years, it's not as if we're going to be coming back for amendments for a later phase. We're going to be one and done for quite a number of years on that. So for those reasons, we've chosen not to offer that condition, but absolutely intend to comply with that condition in the UDO as it currently stands. The last piece that I wanted to sort of touch on preliminarily is we understand that anytime we develop a school, there's going to be traffic. It happens every time we build a school because we're going to be having our constituency come 185 days a year, twice a day. There'll be some traffic burden on existing infrastructure. We understand that. We are very sympathetic to our adjacent neighbors. And if we could have found a site that was on a main artery, we would have. This was the particularly targeted area of Apex and this particular portion of Western Wake County that has been objectively identified by our consultants with the Operations Research Education Lab at NC State for where the needed location is. This simply is what was the best available site, constraints and all. So what we want to be sure that we do is be mindful of our neighbors, be sure that we are good neighbors, and bring some benefit to it. We realize there's extra traffic, but we also think that there's some community benefits. We'll be extending the greenway, as was already mentioned. We'll be providing a greenway easement, as was already mentioned. We'll be bringing water and sewer to the site and extending those to our eastern boundary as the town requires, so that in the future, that benefit is available to the landowners on the east. And in addition, our expectation is that DOT will require us to bring those roads to state standards so that they can take over the maintenance. That relieves a big burden from the adjacent landowners. So those streets will be in improved condition. The state will bear the responsibility for maintenance thereafter. And we'll continue to work with our neighbors as we do anytime road improvements lie. So we understand that there is some very understandable concern and confusion. We find that with our adjacent neighbors every time. But we think at the end of this, most will see that while the construction period is an inconvenience, once things settle in, they're rarely as bad as people expect. But we are certainly mindful of our neighbors and those impacts. With that, I don't want to belabor and track back over it. I think Shelley did an excellent job of recapping the petition. If there are any questions I can answer for you, I'm happy to try.
All right, thank you, Ms. Parker. Any questions for Ms. Parker from Council? Councilman Gant.
Thank you, Mayor. Ms. Parker, I was hoping you'd inform me whether it's policy or requirements or what that Wake County Public Schools continue to build kind of suburban sized, at least land requirement wise, schools, and why with the land limitations in Western Wake, why is it not been a movement toward more of an urban that you see in big cities type of development?
That's a great question. I think for the last 15 years, which is the whole time I've been here, the push has always been to be able to build our standard size schools to be able to maximize the capacity at each opportunity. Land is a valuable resource. Lord's not making any more of it, and it's going away quickly and particularly quickly by those developers who can be nimble, like residential real estate. So what we are trying to do is, as long as we can find property for which a full-size school can be built, we're going to continue to do that. But that's not the only thing we're doing. We're also looking at flex academies. We're looking at early college high schools that are much smaller in size. We've got a college and a high school in Wake Forest and a former Winn-Dixie. We've got an elementary school in Apex in a former injection molding plant off of Lake Pine Road. So we look at a variety of options. I think we feel so driven by the capacity needs to try to build on the largest sites we can for as long as we can. We just cannot develop small sites quickly enough to keep up with the demand. I mentioned earlier the excessive enrollments that we have at our high schools now. There are already 81 modular classrooms trying to help us flex to address that. And thank goodness we have room to put them on the sites. All sites don't have that room. So it's really more of a practice by necessity. It's not a mandate or directive. Our board has been very supportive of a variety of options.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Dozier.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Ms. Parker. A couple of things, and I'm not sure. Let me know, Mayor, if I'm getting too deep into the weeds for this too. But along the lines of what Mr. Gant was speaking about just the nature of the school, I was, as soon as the school is completed, we are already told that the cafeteria space is already not constructed intentionally for some reason for the students to be able to eat in that facility. Then that means that students then have to who drive or who ride with other students have to then have to bring a car, bring a car, have a space, and then look for places to eat and get back to school. So there's a lot of things that happen around schools in that in locations like we just discussed. And the other thing I'll say is that we're told, like with Apex Friendship High School, I was told that the infrastructure for the modular units were already in place day one. And so we're just, even though we recognize the growth, we're not building the size school or the type of school or the setting to be able to serve the students that you're speaking about that even attend the school. And then I will end with the traffic. And so that's a whole lot there, but related to transportation improvements we were trying to do, we were not able to do them. We sort of did some negotiation around that, but end up at the end of the day having to do a whole lot to address the concerns of parents and administrators, and rightly so. So those are a couple of my things: traffic, the capacity of the school for people to eat and have access to nutrition, and then to be able to be in one building. So,
thank you for that. Some of those I really can't speak to. I want to be very cautious that I don't step on the toes of a quasi-judicial hearing. But I think you're right. I think traffic is probably going to be better placed there. They will have the traffic study information and can speak to it. My understanding, and this is really at the 10,000 foot level, is that we have design guidelines that require seating for a certain number of students so that all students can cycle through the cafeteria within a set number of lunch periods. So I do understand that there is some procedures in place for that. I think everywhere gets in trouble when they become overcrowded. And that's what we're trying to fight as vigorously as we can. In terms of the modular units, we plan for that in advance for several reasons. One is to be able to anticipate what traffic could be if those modular units are in place, so that we can be very forthright with the town and try to work with the towns and DOT to be sure that whatever improvements need to be made are made up front. So we're prepared for that growth. Again, modular units, we hope don't last forever. There's certainly a flexibility tool for us to help address growth until we can get the brick and mortar facilities in place that we need. On this particular site, as Shelley was pointing out earlier, it's fairly constrained because of the streams and size and topography. This is not a site where there is room for modular classrooms in the future. So that will not be the case here. student enrollment here will be limited to those that the building can appropriately handle. So I hope I've touched all three of your bases. I'm afraid that's the depth of the knowledge that I have. I'm sure our building designers and staff will be able to be more helpful when the site plan comes forward. But I hope that helps.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Parker. Councilmember Killingsworth.
Yes, thank you. Just to add to the concerns that Mayor Pro Tem Dozier brought up, parking is also an issue that we frequently hear about. Parking needs for students. So just to bring that up as a concern that we hear very often with our high schools is, just the lack of parking space.
Certainly, and that's a common refrain. I'll be glad to share that with our folks. And again, I think they'll be able to address that. There are some, similar to the cafeteria loading guidelines, there are guidelines on the number of student parking spaces that we provide as well. The town always has a say in that as well, to be sure that there's the relationship between the capacity and those parking spaces fall within certain requirements. I'll be surprised if there's a notion that it's ever enough, but I will tell you that we try very hard to be sure that we meet or exceed those standards.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? All right, hearing none. All right, with that, we'll go ahead and open up public hearing for comments on this item. And my understanding, we do have 3 recorded comments. Actually, before we go to that, got a question from Councilmember Stallings.
Sorry, thank you, Mayor. And Ms. Parker, could you reiterate again about the cafeteria issue as much as you can, and also about the capacity issue again, please? In terms of serving Apex families.
Yes, ma'am. In terms of cafeteria seatings, I do not know it with great detail. I'm certainly not a facility planner, but I am aware that our design guidelines and our learning environment guidelines have a prescribed method by which cafeteria size is determined. I believe there's a square footage per student that's designed so that, given the building capacity, those numbers of students have the opportunity to pass through the cafeteria within a certain number of lunch periods. Beyond that, I'm sure the site planners can provide, the architects and our facility planners can provide more detail at site plan. But there is a process and a procedure. There is thought behind its determination. I think, and this is just my personal thought, is that our best designs, even projecting likely crowding, becomes even more difficult when you see the sort of crowding that unfortunately we're seeing at Apex, Friendship, and Panther Creek. So we will do the best we can to plan ahead, but there is a reasoning and a process behind that. In terms of the capacity, could you please clarify a bit more about the point of your question? I'm not sure I understand.
The point of my question is, I'm concerned about school capacity for our families in Apex, and my question is, and I think your answer earlier was you don't know, but again, I just wanted to ask for clarity. I want our Apex families to be served as much as possible, obviously, and can you give me some indication about how our Apex families would be served by this school?
Certainly.
From a capacity perspective.
Certainly. As a general rule, the student assignment plan is set by the Board of Education about a year in advance of a new school opening. So the specifics of the likely attendance zone has not yet been determined. There are some factors I can suggest that you may want to take into consideration, but of course, until the plan comes out, there are no guarantees. Typically, most schools have a walk zone of about 1.5 miles in diameter where bus transportation is not provided. So it would be unusual not to have that sort of perimeter attendance. I'm sure somewhere our student assignment folks are cringing at my saying that. Beyond that, I think the high schools that are near to this are all overcrowded. So I would think the attendance zone will be drawn in a very logical way that populates this school for best utilization and tries to help with overcrowding in surrounding schools. Beyond that, I really can't give you any specifics on a particular plan for where its students might come from.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Dozier.
Hey, Ms. Parker, your statement about cringing, I will add the statement related to the 1.5 miles. That is, your policy says safely. And so that is some of the, yeah, that's like the interpretation, like, can a child safely get to school? And a high school student is typically walking, not with a parent, like and so that's where the safe routes to school really didn't apply for high school students. We had to show that you couldn't get across Huey Olive as well. So I think that's the thing, that your policy is about safely getting to the school. So I think that's up for interpretation, yeah.
Yes, ma'am. And typically my understanding is for busy roads that are difficult to cross. I think Sunset Lake Road might fall into that category. You mentioned Huey Olive. I think you have a really good feel for that. I guess my thought, and again, it's my personal thought, is a 1.5 mile radius for safe transport. It still would be unusual not to see that 1.5 miles likely considered in the attendance zone. But you're absolutely right. Transportation would be provided if there's a barrier to that safe access.
Thank you.
Very well, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Councilman Mahaffey.
Thank you, Mayor. To add on to the last point my colleagues were saying, I realize you can't tell us the assignment plan 3 years ahead. But if you have the data in front of you, could you repeat again, what's the crowding numbers for the high schools in the surrounding area?
Absolutely. I took a quick look at the surrounding high schools. Apex High School, Apex Friendship High School, Holly Springs High School, Middle Creek High School, and Panther Creek High School. Altogether, they average a utilization of 120% of capacity. The highest one is Panther Creek at 144.9% capacity. And at those 5 high schools alone, we've had to bring in 81 modular classroom units to try to address overcrowding. The seats that will be provided by this school are 2,240. They are well over, just in the Apex area alone, they're well over 1,000 seat shortage already. So our concern is that if this school doesn't open on time, we will be in a dire circumstance for high school capacity. It's just simply that simple. So I think that's probably the information you were looking for. But what we have done in Western Wake County, and I think we all know that with the development of 540 and with the Western Wake Partners sewer treatment plant development, it has really opened that corridor for development, and it's spread like wildfire up and down that corridor. So in the last 15 years, while Apex has doubled in growth, we've built 2.4 million square feet of schools in that corridor and still have that level of crowding. Development is not slowing. Everything that you're doing right, but it's providing us with a substantial challenge. So we're hoping within 5 years to add about 3,672 seats in Apex alone. 2,240 are here. And the elementary school that we talked about in our last rezoning is in that mix as well. So I think we're paddling as hard as we can.
All right, anyone else? Okay, now we'll open up the public hearing for comments. We do have 3 comments, recorded comments. So if IT could play those now. Thank you.
Sir. I'll play them right now.
Hi, my name is Tanya Cumelander, and my business address is 5013 Thriftwood Drive, Apex, North Carolina, 27539. I'm calling in regards to rezoning case 20CZ12 and annexation petition 700. Again, my name is Tanya Cumelander, and I'm one of the owners of the Briarwood neighborhood. There are several reasons this rezoning should be denied. First, the rezoning will adversely impact nearly 500 residents in the Briarwood Farms community. Traffic from the high school students, parents, and sports will channel through our small neighborhood streets, which were not designed to handle high volumes of traffic. They are small residential streets with narrow ribbon pavement and no curb, gutter, or sidewalks. Using these streets as the only access points for a high school presents a serious safety and health risk to the children and residents that live and play in the Briarwood Farms neighborhood. Second, approving this rezoning negatively impacts Briarwood's private packaged sewer plant. This is a sewer plant permitted by DWQ and operated by Aqua, neither of which have been made aware of the impacts of the stream crossing Wake County Public Schools is required to make. This stream serves as the point of discharge for sewer effluent. The stream is intermittent and designed as a low-flow tributary. Any damage to this stream or this private package plant would make the Briarwood neighborhood unlivable and unusable, requiring Apex to provide and pay for utilities to Briarwood. Third, the zoning needs to be denied because the landfill beside the school regularly builds earthen mounds of debris that rise above the treetops. These mounds can be seen from surrounding areas. Noisy bulldozers move dirt and debris, creating clouds of dust and airborne particles that will negatively affect the school. The proposed 50-foot buffer is inadequate. The Apex UDO calls for all landfills to be located 250 feet from a school. The fact that the landfill exists prior to construction of the school ignores the importance of this UDO rule. That is, schools deserve to be separated from offensive uses such as a landfill. For these reasons, I ask you to deny the petition. Thank you.
This is Mark Cumelander. I'm calling in on rezoning petition 20CZ12 and annexation petition 700. I am also one of the owners of Briarwood neighborhood. As Tanya Cumelander mentioned in her previous comments, the site that the school proposes presents numerous challenges affecting the public safety and welfare. Even though the school system has owned this site for over 6 years, it now presents this rezoning as a matter of urgency. It has chosen an accelerated rezoning process during a pandemic and a lawsuit against us, rather than having a dialogue about how best to resolve the challenges this site presents. The school system has sued us seeking use of our roads. My father-in-law built and paid for these roads in 1986. We have borne the cost of maintaining them for the past 36 years under a private road maintenance agreement recorded in book 3866, page 274 of the Wake County Registry. That document says that so long as the streets, Driftwood and Dairy Down, shown on the subdivision map, remain private, Briarwood will be responsible for maintaining them. To now permit high school traffic on these residential roads goes beyond their residential use and purpose. The school contends these roads are owned by the county. This misstates the law because counties do not have legal authority to own roads in North Carolina. Only NCDOT and cities have that authority. That is why cities like the town of Apex get power bill money and counties do not. Also, we have not had the opportunity to be equal participants in this process. We did not receive notice of the community meeting until 3 weeks after it occurred. And while the public notice signs were posted on the site, they were placed deep in the woods and out of sight from traveled roads. The The signs had no content and were not in Spanish, which is the predominant language of the neighborhood. Also, we have not been given the opportunity to equally participate in this process because the school system has had unfettered access to make numerous presentations to staff, the planning board, and now the town board, while we have been subject to time limitations and speech and content limitations and not given equal time to participate personally or virtually. The limited comments that we have been able to submit have been shared with the school system ahead of public hearings so that they can offer rebuttal presentations. We have not been afforded this opportunity for rebuttal. This also has stymied dialogue and raises numerous concerns. For all these reasons, we ask that the town board pause, allow the school's lawsuit to resolve, and give everyone an opportunity to have a dialogue about how best to craft a win-win solution for all. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Maria Martinez. I live in 5040 Lord Lane in Berry Down Lane. I am concerned because I just heard about the new school that they're going to decide to study. I want to know if I should know something before that construction is going to be added to right here, the Schiller Mobile Park home. This should be something I should be concerned about my trailer being there. I am concerned because a lot of kids play around here. And if that's the case, that buses are going to come and go, I am worried because something might happen to my kids. I feel like there should be more information about the owner, which haven't been talking to us about it. I feel like there should be time for us to see we have to move our mobile home. But since that hasn't happened, we are asking for the owners of the Briarwood Farm owners to come and have a meeting with us to let us know something. We have been having many attempts to call them, so we can have a meeting of all the residents here, but it hasn't happened. So I think there should be some action taken place to the people that we live here. Thank you.
All right, sir, that was the last one.
Okay, thank you, John. With that, we'll close public hearing for this item.
Excuse me, sir?
Yes.
We actually had 5 emails as well.
Okay. All right.
So we received an email from Ms. Benitez Serapio, which says, I've been given a notice that a school will be built in our neighborhood. I'm sorry, but I do not agree with your decisions, and neither do my neighbors agree that you want to evict us from here. We have lived for many years in this neighborhood. If they evicted us, we wouldn't have a place to go. Please don't build the school in our neighborhood. Thank you. And then we received 4 additional emails from Mr. Alejandro Soto at 3333 Bizzle Court, Ms. Alejandrina Badillo at 3441 Linford Drive, Ms. Claudia Adele at 3440 Carlotta Court, and Ms. Naleli at 3431 Linford Drive. All 4 emails were concerned about the impact of the school construction on their neighborhood. They were worried that they might have to find a new place to live and were concerned about how much moving might cost, especially during the pandemic. They also asked for more information about the project. In addition, Ms. Medell wrote, if we don't have to relocate, but building the new high school means that there would be highly impacted, since that is the only point of gathering for our kids, especially our teens in this community. If you come to our community, you'll see dozens of kids playing soccer and basketball at Thriftwood. You can also see many of our kids play outside and ride their bikes every afternoon. Therefore, having traffic through our neighborhood will be robbing our kids of their playing space and exposing them to potential accidents. Staff did email each resident and let them know that their comments would be read tonight. We explained that the school will be next to the neighborhood, not on top of it. That school construction should only use Dairy Downs Road and Thriftwood Drive, and offered to help with any questions that they had. And we sent a map showing the school property next to theirs as well. That we received.
Okay, so is that it? All the comments?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, thank you. So we'll officially close it now. And with that, again, there's no vote tonight on this item. We will hear it again on March 25th, 9 a.m. to allow for a 24-hour public comment period. And Ms. Mayo, 2 and 3 are together, correct?
That's correct, sir.
All right, thank you. All right, with that, we'll move to public hearing 4. And that is public hearing and possible motion to adopt an ordinance on question of annexation number 701.
Good evening. Can you see my screen okay?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
These are items 4 and 5, annexation for Hackney PUD. The rezoning is in the western portion of our jurisdiction. The property is on the north side of Olive Chapel Road between Smith Farm and Linden Subdivision. The property is currently zoned rural residential, and a small portion is in Wake County zoned R80W. The applicant is proposing to rezone to plan unit development conditional zoning. The proposed PUD is designated as medium density residential on the land use map, and the PUD is consistent with the land use map designation. The site consists of 3 parcels on the north side of Olive Chapel, totaling 79.79 acres. The site also has 1 single family residence, several barns and sheds, and 2 existing ponds. Along the northern boundary, there is a 100-foot stream buffer from Reedy Branch. The applicant conducted a neighborhood meeting on October 29th, 2020, and a copy is included in the staff report. The applicant has limited the uses to single family, accessory apartment, and townhouse. The applicant has limited the density to 3.5 units per acre. This was a reduction from the staff report that went out with the town council agenda. It was 4, and the applicant has reduced it to 3.5 units per acre. A full list of the proposed setbacks can be found on page 3 of the staff report. The proposed PUD meets or exceeds the buffers required by the UDO. They're proposing a 20-foot type A on the eastern and western. Along Olive Chapel Road is a 30-foot type E, or if the homes along Olive Chapel Road are not alley loaded, the buffer shall be a 30-foot type B buffer. The applicant has also included an additional condition that the 100-foot riparian buffer to the north will include an additional 100-foot buffer to be established. And this additional 100 feet may include utilities, trails, or other active or passive recreation. RCA shall meet the requirements of the UDO. The applicant has provided a condition that existing deciduous trees greater than 18 inches that are removed during site development shall be replaced by planting a 1.5 caliper. The applicant has provided a condition that residential dwelling units will be provided with solar conduit to accommodate the future installation of solar panels. The applicant is proposing to keep the 2 ponds if they are found to be structurally sound. The town of Apex is proposed to provide water, sewer, and electric services. A full list of the architectural conditions can be found on page 4 of the staff report and are generally consistent with the surrounding subdivisions. A full list of the transportation conditions can be found on page 6 of the updated staff report. To summarize, Haas Avenue will be constructed between Olive Chapel and the terminus at the north. Olive Chapel Road will be widened to include a 100-foot eastbound and left turn lane and a 100-foot westbound right lane with appropriate deceleration length. A 6-foot bike lane and 5-foot paved shoulder will be located on the north side of Olive Chapel Road. The applicant has also included a condition that the alleys may be proposed to vary from town standards in order to accommodate water and sewer utilities. There will be no private driveways permitted along Olive Chapel Road. The development plan will incorporate sidewalk infrastructure on Olive Chapel Road. A trail will serve as a connection from the western portion of the community to the Reedy Branch Greenway. Sidewalk will be provided on both sides of the street, and there will be a 10-foot side path provided along the minor collector road. The applicant has also included a condition that a 5-foot sidewalk shall be constructed on the western limits to connect to the Linden subdivision, and a full wording of that condition can be found on page 6 of the staff report. A letter of impact from Wake County Public School System was received for this rezoning and is included in the staff report packet. It indicates that the elementary and high school schools within the current assignment area for this rezoning are anticipated to have insufficient capacity for future students. Transportation to schools outside the current assignment area should be anticipated. School expansion or construction within the next 5 years may address concerns at the high school level. Possible long-term solutions may include capping students out to schools with available seats, reassignments, or calendar changes. The applicant has also added a affordable housing zoning condition, and a full list of the wording can be found on page 6 of the staff report. If the town of Apex has a fund or other mechanism in place to receive donations, the developer will contribute $215 per lot to this fund. This rezoning was submitted prior to the Environmental Advisory Board holding meetings. The Parks and Rec Advisory Commission reviewed this item at their December 9th meeting and unanimously recommended a fee in lieu of dedication with credit for construction of the Greenway. The Planning Board held a public hearing on March 8th and voted to recommend approval with the conditions as offered by the applicant by a vote of 6-0. Planning staff can recommend approval of the rezoning with the conditions as proposed by the applicant. Approval of the rezoning is reasonable and in the public interest because the site will act as a transition between higher and lower residential densities. The proposed rezoning also provides for increased stream buffers, planting standards, and a contribution to the affordable housing. I'm here to answer any questions. The applicant is also here.
All right, thank you, Ms. Lofton. Any questions for Ms. Lofton from council? All right, does the applicant wish to speak?
Yes, can you all hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, this is Glenda Top. So I am new at this virtual stuff, so I'm glad you can hear me. I am here tonight representing the applicant, and we have put together a slideshow that I would like to go through. It does go over some of the things that Liz has addressed, but we feel that it is important to hit all the points about our project because we do feel that it is unique and offers the people who will hopefully live here a environment that will be a little different from other communities in Apex. First, I would like to thank staff, council, and the neighbors for their input. We've really appreciated it, and we have made changes that we feel are better because of the input that we have gotten. So with that, I am going to speak, and Brindy Vega is going to control the PowerPoint presentation. So we are tag teaming tonight. So as you all know, the item is the Hackney PUD, and the next slide is showing the location of it. So Brindy, are we going to the next one? Yes. So as you can see, the property is located off of Olive Chapel Road, and you can see the different developments that are around it, both Sweetwater, Pricewood Farms, Woodbridge, Linden, Smith Farm. Across the street is Holland Crossing. All the developments that I have addressed are either zoned as a PUD or medium density. So I just wanted to point out that what the current zoning is for those properties. On the next slide, as staff pointed out on the 2045 land use plan, the property that is being considered for rezoning is designated as medium density. Medium density is 3 to 6 units per acre. Originally, we had proposed 4 units per acre, but after discussions with various council members, residents, we did propose a change in the density. We have gone from 4 units per acre to 3.5 units per acre. The total units based on the acreage is 279. And right now we see the breakdown being 60% townhomes and 40% single family homes. The development is consistent with the future Apex land use plan, and what you see on this slide just repeats what I have just mentioned. We feel that the designation of medium density does act as a transition between the higher and lower densities, and that the proposed Hackney development proposing the medium density housing is appropriate for this location. One of the reasons why we reduced the density, and it's a discussion that obviously just took place, is for schools. We understand and received a letter, or the town received a letter from Wake County showing that the schools in this area are at capacity. What we wanted to do is to show you examples of public schools that are within a certain radius of our site. And Brindy, if you can point out our site just so that people know where we are. So we are the green that Brindy is pointing out. And these are the public schools within a 3-mile radius of our site. And they are color coded. Yellow is elementary, green is middle, and the blue is high school. The next map that you're going to see is we expanded the radius just to show the number of public schools that are within a 10-mile radius of our site. And of course, the number of these schools greatly increases when you go to the 10-mile radius. There are several new elementary schools planned. One is Friendship Elementary, which was just recently rezoned to become a larger school. And there is a school planned for Depot 499 that hopefully will come online in the next couple of years. Want to point out that yes, there is overcrowding. The schools are at capacity, but we do believe that the road network in the area, connectivity does allow for kids that are living in this part of Apex to go to a public school. It may not be their preferred school, but everyone is guaranteed a seat. The other thing that I do want to point out, although we are focusing on public schools, I think we all know that there are options available for children today that are not public options. There are quite a few private charter schools within the Apex area. And of course, we do have quite a few people that take advantage of being homeschooled. And I think we all can attest to the fact that the way kids are going to school now has changed. And I think it's up in the air, at least for a while, how that will play out. But we did want to give you an idea of the number of schools that are located within a 3 and 10 mile radius of our rezoning. For the next slide, I'll wait for it to come up.
Sorry, I think it's just slow. Okay,
not a problem. Okay. As staff pointed out, the basic uses that we are proposing within the Hackney PUD are single-family detached, townhomes, greenway, and active and passive recreation. There are 2 amenity areas for use within the development. One will be a pool and clubhouse, and then we are also offering a more passive area that will have play areas for children, adults in the project. And I'll talk a little bit more about what the amenities are as we go forward with the slideshow. As staff pointed out, we came in right before the Environmental Advisory Board started, but it was important for us to look at the requirements of the board, and also we wanted to come up with something that was different. So what I'm going to go over now are the things that we have added that we feel make this a unique project and one that is not normally seen around. We also feel that it's a community that, given what we've seen over the last year, will be much needed in the future. In terms of planting and landscaping, as you see here, we've incorporated warm season grasses. We have agreed to install required plants that are bird and pollinator friendly and that are recognized by the New Hope Audubon Society or the North Carolina State University Manual for Landscaping for Wildlife with Native Plants. We will have plantings in pocket parks to correlate with the statewide Butterfly Highway Initiative. We are going to provide a minimum of 4 native hardwood trees, and we are using the NCSU manual for landscaping for wildlife and native plants. And we are agreeing for tree replacement in terms of deciduous trees with a DBH of 18 inches or greater will be replaced with a 1.5 inch caliber native tree if removed during site development. So these are conditions that we have agreed to. Continuing on with things that we feel make this development different, we've got a community where we are blessed with a lot of natural areas. And it's important in looking at that we take advantage of it. For those that may not know, to the rear of the site is a wildlife corridor. And in talking with at least one council member, we have added a condition, as staff pointed out, that in addition to the 100-foot riparian buffer on the north, we are adding an additional 100-foot buffer in that area along the rear of the property. Because of a class, I have to say that Brindy, who's doing the slideshow, and I took, we learned a lot about birds and bees and butterflies. So with this development, we are providing 20 bird houses. They're actually bluebird houses that we will be purchasing from the New Hope Audubon Society or a similar nonprofit organization. There will be a trail system within the development that will allow residents to access these bird houses. And we are also going to have signage throughout the site that will educate residents of the environmental elements that we have provided. Again, with people wanting to spend more time outside and knowing, particularly with the young kids today, it is important for them in their learning to learn more about the environment. And we want to provide that opportunity. Again, the pocket parks will be on site and they will support the statewide Butterfly Highway Initiative. And these are all things that we feel make our development unique and different. Again, in looking at things that we are offering above and beyond, we know that solar is becoming a lot more important. So we are providing solar conduits for future installation of solar panels in our homes that will be built. And also, water quality is extremely important today. So the SCMs will have signage to reduce pet waste. Also, there will be signage that will help to minimize fertilizer near drainage areas. We are looking to make this as clean a community as we can. I guess we're at the next slide. As staff pointed out, we did go to the Parks and Recreation Cultural Resources, I have a cold, Advisory Commission, and they did recommend a fee in lieu of dedication, and the credit will be towards construction of a greenway connecting Hesse Avenue to the Reedy Branch Greenway in Smith Farm. As far as public facilities go, we do believe we are providing a very walkable community. Pedestrian facilities will include sidewalk along Olive Chapel Road and throughout the internal street network. There is a 10-foot side path located along Hesse Avenue, and a trail from Reedy Creek Greenway will connect the northwestern portion of the neighborhood to Hesse Avenue. And also it's important to note that a connection from Reedy Branch Greenway to the American Tobacco Trail should be completed in the near future. I do want to add one point. In talking early on, and I do appreciate personally the responsiveness of council members in responding to a request to meet and talk. From a planner who has worked many years with council members, very much appreciated. There was a discussion about providing an additional pedestrian connection, and I'm going to read. We made a little bit of a tweak because of staff did read our condition, but I do want to read this condition that we have added to our case. And that is, prior to the 75th lot in the neighborhood, the developer will extend a 5-foot sidewalk approximately 860 feet along the north side of Olive Chapel to the western limits of the Linden subdivision. Developer will attempt to obtain the required right-of-way and/or easements for construction of this sidewalk from the adjacent property owners. If the required right-of-way and/or easements cannot be obtained by that time, a fee in lieu in the amount of 125% of the estimated cost of construction plus fair market value of the property to be acquired shall be addressed. Any performance guarantee provided for this section of sidewalk shall be released upon acceptance of said fee in lieu by the town. And I just wanted to make sure that that was read into the record. Again, you know, talking about the fact that we do feel that this is going to be a very pedestrian-friendly community. Sidewalks will be provided on both sides of all streets, and there will be a 10-foot side path provided along minor collector roads as shown on the bike and pedestrian plan. So,
I'm sorry to interrupt. I should have let you know it's a 9-minute time, so we are closing in on that right now. Can you wrap it up? Wrap your comments?
That's
okay.
Perfect, Mayor. I am wrapping up.
Thank you.
Thank you. And again, we're addressing affordable housing. My closing paragraph is the following. In today's environment, it is important to offer residents a unique experience. More people are staying home, enjoying where they live. We believe we are offering this with the proposed Hackney PUD. We have incorporated the environmental elements of the site into the design of the planned community. Residents will be able to spend time outside enjoying what the community has to offer. Both adults and children will be able to view the bluebird houses and the butterflies that will be attracted to the property. This is particularly important given the current times we are living in. We believe the proposed development is an asset to this part of Apex and to the entire town of Apex. And again, I didn't know exactly how much time I had. So again, thank you for letting us address the council. I am here to answer questions, as is several other members of our team. So we've got a group of people who are on the line who can answer questions that might be more knowledgeable of those things that I am. But again, thank you very much.
My apology, I didn't give you the time limit. Okay.
No, that's okay.
I appreciate your presentation.
I tend to talk a lot. Well, not a lot, but I do talk.
It's all good. How you doing, Brendy? Good to see you.
I'm doing well, thank you, Mayor.
All right, great, great. Any questions from council? Okay, we got Councilmember Stallings.
Just for clarification on your, it sounds like you're talking about a maximum of 279 units, combined townhomes and single family. And will your affordable housing contribution be $215 times all 279? Is that the plan?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And can you speak to a little bit about energy efficiency of your homes and townhomes? And had you considered putting any solar panels on any of the homes?
So other than what I said, I am probably going to defer to a representative of who will be developing the property to address how they handle that. Is that okay?
Sure.
Randy.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. This is Randy King with Pulte Homes, and we are certainly interested in this property and this project. We've enjoyed working with Glenda and Brendy and the rest of the team to develop the conditions that you've heard tonight. We do plan to install the infrastructure so that if a buyer would like to install solar panels on the roof, they're able to do that. We find in today's market that sometimes the way that happens is more of a lease type arrangement, and so they contract with a private provider who, you know, they don't pay up front for the solar panels, they lease them over time. And we are concerned about affordability, so we think that if someone was to go the solar route, that may be the most likely way that they would have solar in this neighborhood, is to work with a private provider that leases the panels to them.
And Thank you for that. And in terms of your amenity building, and I can't remember if we had spoken about this earlier, was there any discussion about putting solar panels on the pool amenity building?
That is something we had not considered, and that is certainly we can consider it. I don't think I'd want to make that commitment tonight, just because there's a lot of moving parts with that. We find that a pool really is only used 5 months out of the year, and so it may not be efficient to put solar panels on a building that really doesn't have that much use. I certainly will talk to our team about that.
Okay. And when would we expect an answer from them?
I will see if I can get you a response tomorrow morning.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Stallings. Councilmember Killingsworth.
Can you, Randy, could you speak to the offerings as far as first floor masters? That was one of the things that we had talked about, to make sure that you had options for people who would desire a first floor zero entry type setting.
Yeah. So thank you for the question. So on the single family detached homes, of course, we're about 2 years probably from building the first home out there, but the homes that we plan today to build out there are built in another neighborhood. If there are 4 home offerings, we find that one of those is a master down. 2 of the remaining ones have the option on the first floor for a master and master bath downstairs. In the base home, it's a flex space, a little office with a powder room, but if a buyer wants to, they can opt to have a master down and a master bath on the first floor on those other 2 plans. I think on the 4th plan, it's just not feasible on that one, but 3 of the 4 single family detached do offer it. And then on the townhomes, we're updating those plans right now. So those are on the drawing board, and they probably have another 2 or 3 months before those house plans will be complete. But the generation previous to this did offer first floor bedrooms on the first floor of the townhomes. I think the master was actually on the 2nd floor, but the first floor does have a bedroom and a bath. So we would expect the new generation to be very similar. So I think the majority of the homes would have an option for first floor, either master or downstairs bedroom and bath.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Thank you for the question.
All right. Anyone else?
Well, thank you all very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. King. All right, hearing there are no questions from council, what I'll do at this time is open up public hearing for comments on this item. I don't have any indication here that we have recorded comments. Are there any emails, Ms. Lofton?
Yes, staff did receive 2 emails. I have been in correspondence with Melinda Dyke and she actually represents, her email represents 28 people and 22 households in Smith Farm. Her concerns are related to the school system and the sales centers not explaining the school system to potential buyers and leaving new citizens overwhelmed and ultimately leading to residents blaming the town of Apex and Wake County for these issues. By continuing to overlook our capped school system and allowing further unsustainable development, we are continuing to support the problem. She also mentioned setbacks, and while the proposed roadways could reduce traffic on Olive Chapel Road, it is worth noting that traffic will be increased within adjoining residential subdivisions, which are homes to a significant number of small children. And then they also had concerns about density. And we are concerned about the impact continued development may have on the ecosystem, conservation of trees, and impact to air quality. when so many other subdivisions have not been completed. Therefore, they asked Town Council to consider the current plan and ask for clarification on the density of homes planned before allowing this rezoning. I was also in correspondence with Nathan Census at 2890 Farmhouse Drive, and he also had concerns about density. He mentioned that Smith Farm is 2.3 dwelling units per acre, and he'd ventured that all other communities, all of Chapa, are in the same range. So his concern was about density as well.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Lofton. All right, with that, we'll go ahead and close public hearing for comments on this item, and we'll pick back up on that on March 25th, Thursday, for the vote. All right, thank you so much. Ms. Council, are you okay to move to public hearing 6? Is everybody okay? You need a break? Everybody good? All right, we'll move forward then. All right. Okay, public hearing 6, public hearing and possible motion to approve rezoning application 21CZ02, Abbey Spring PUD. Ms. Lofton.
Hold on one second. Let me just transfer over. So can you see my screen okay?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I had to switch gears from different rezoning.
No problem.
This is rezoning 21CZ01. It is located within the Apex Peakway. The property to rezone is on the west side of William Street between Walgreens and the post office. The subject property was originally rezoned to plain unit development conditional use in 2002. The applicant is proposing to rezone to plain unit development conditional zoning. As you may recall, the 2045 land use map was recently amended and designates the subject property as high density multifamily and commercial services. The proposed PUD is consistent with the land use map designation. The property was previously cleared and currently is vacant. A stream determination was conducted last month, and it was determined that the stream is a 50-foot intermittent stream. The applicant conducted a neighborhood meeting on December 15th, and the neighborhood meeting is included in the staff report. And the applicant is proposing one use, which is age-restricted multifamily with a maximum density of 17 units per acre. The applicant is proposing the maximum height to be limited to 3 stories and 48 feet. The maximum building size shall not exceed 96,000 square feet. The building and vehicle setbacks have been updated and can be found on page 3 of the updated staff report. The proposed PUD meets or exceeds the buffers required by the UDO. The buffers are the same as the current PUD, with the exception the applicant has increased the landscaping opacity along the western boundary from a 20-foot type B to a 20-foot type A buffer. Along the south is a 40-foot type A, and along West Williams is a 30-foot type B. The RCA requirement on this parcel is approximately 60,000 square feet in the current PUD, and the applicant is proposing to maintain 62,162 square feet of RCA. The town of Apex will provide water, sewer, and electric service. This property is proposed to connect to existing services in West William Street. If the rezoning is approved, the developer will submit a major site plan that will be reviewed by town council. The main exterior building elevation shall be brick and vinyl lap siding. There have been several new conditions that have been added to the rezoning based on neighborhood meetings between the developer and the neighbors. I wanted to highlight some of those. The lighting shall be Light poles shall be limited to 25 feet. Pole-mounted light fixtures shall be full cutoff, and no lights shall be allowed in the Type A buffer. The applicant has also added the 6 conditions highlighted on the screen. These are to address the neighborhood concerns. The applicant is requesting a reduction in the parking requirement. Since this project is age restricted senior apartments, their request reduction is based on the applicant's experience with similar developments in the region and the planned transit stop that will be close walking distance. It is anticipated that the town of Apex will install a new bus stop for Go Apex Route 1 in front of the post office. And the applicant has provided a condition that if the town has completed those improvements prior to CO for this project, they will provide a new shelter and trash receptacle for that bus stop. The proposed PUD is consistent with the Apex Transportation Plan. The proposed development will have access to both West William Street and Olive Chapel Road through joint access with the Walgreens development. The applicant has also provided a condition for vehicular cross-access easement. A full wording of that condition is on page 6 of the staff report. The post office were to redevelop in the future, so the cross-access would be in this area. Currently, there is a stormwater pond serving the adjacent Walgreens development. It is anticipated that the proposed development will include and share an SCM. For the site, the post-development on-site stormwater discharge rate for the development shall not exceed the pre-development rate. They also propose to install signage near SCMs, whether above ground or underground, in order to reduce pet waste and eliminate fertilizer near SCM drainage areas. The Apex Environmental Advisory Board held a meeting on this item at their December 17th meeting. A full list of the suggested zoning conditions are on page 7 of the staff report, and the applicant has agreed to add them. The Parks and Rec Advisory Board reviewed this item at their February 24th meeting and unanimously recommended a fee in lieu of dedication. The Planning Board held a public hearing on March 8th and voted to recommend approval with the conditions as offered by the applicant by a vote of 5 to 1. Planning staff can recommend approval of the rezoning with the conditions as proposed by the applicant. The proposed PUD is reasonable and in the public interest because the rezoning will allow the project to develop as a residential use that will support the existing non-residential uses in the area. The proximity of the site to shopping and future transit makes it an ideal location for senior affordable housing. This is in keeping with the goals of Advanced Apex and Apex Affordable Housing Plan. And I will now turn over the presentation to Shannon Cox, who will conclude staff's presentation.
Good evening once again. Since the affordable housing plan is, I'll share my notes here so you have something to look at. Since the affordable housing plan is so new to all of us, we wanted to spend a few extra minutes going into a little bit more detail regarding the consistency of the proposed rezoning with our affordable housing plan adopted just last month. That's in your staff report. It's what I have on the screen. The affordable housing plan went into detail about the needs in Apex. Specifically, it identified that we have an existing gap of 2,000 rental units affordable to households earning less than $40,000 per year. And the proposed rezoning offers income restricted units with rents affordable to households with an annual income no greater than 60% AMI, which translates for a 1 to 2 person household just to where our gap is. The plan also notes that we have limited options for seniors to age in place, and as Liz mentioned, they're offering age-restricted units with at least 80% of occupied units occupied by at least one person 55 or older. So addresses that need as well. The plan notes that we do not have a proportional share of the region's subsidized rental housing, and that's primarily due to the high land costs in Apex, as well as limited access to transit, which makes it difficult to get those low-income housing tax credits or LIHTC financing. Since this project is along the transit corridor, this is a potential opportunity for LIHTC funding. And then in the needs, the plan notes that Apex has a small share of small and large multifamily developments in our housing stock compared to Wake County as a whole. And again, this rezoning is proposing multifamily or apartment use. As far as the recommendations in the adopted plan, it's recommended that we work toward having affordable housing near transit. And of course, this is directly adjacent to our Go Apex Route 1 that we're working hard to begin service, which is along a main corridor in Apex with access to commercial services as well as other multifamily developments. The plan, as a near-term recommendation, suggests that we prioritize gap financing to assist those projects seeking that LIHTC funding. As you know, this project is pursuing that gap financing. And then finally, the plan prioritizes that we get new units on the ground as well as preserving our existing affordable units, with a suggested goal of trying to have 300 subsidized units either developed or in development within 5 years. And this project is proposing 84 units, which begins to get us on that track. So just in summary, regarding the affordable housing plan, the goals of the rezoning are consistent with getting those subsidized units, targeting units for seniors, targeting those income restrictions, and then planning on affordable housing adjacent to transit. And that concludes my summary of consistency with the affordable housing plan. It sounds like Liz had already wrapped up. So I will turn it back to you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Cox. And thank you, Ms. Lofton. Does anyone from applicant wish to present at all?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, they do.
Okay.
And I will share their presentation for them.
Great, thank you.
Yes, good evening. This is Isabel Maddox. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. And I do want to remind you there's a 9-minute time limit. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and members of the Town Council. I'm Isabel Worthy Maddox, P.O. Box 946, Raleigh 27602. Here with me today are Tim Morgan of Evergreen Construction, the developer, and Rick Baker, a professional engineer of the Timmons Group, our civil engineer for the project. First of all, I want to thank Liz Lofton and all of staff for working closely with us on this proposal. They've been really great to work with, and they've done a thorough presentation today, but I want to just underscore a few high points. Yeah, as Liz said, we're here to rezone this property to facilitate a senior affordable apartment community in a great location. And if you go to the next slide, Liz, you'll see that our location is surrounded by great uses that are really very well located for affordable housing. We have the Walgreens right next door. We have 2 grocery stores in walking distance. We have a bank. We have the Wake Med Healthplex is very close by. We've got doctor's offices across the street. So we feel like we have many amenities that are very critical when a project goes in for NC Housing Finance funding. They've got to score a certain score. And one of the things they look at is the proximity to certain amenities like this. Another thing is transit, and we have a future transit stop just on William Street, right in front of the post office, which is just to the south of this site. And so we think those two things will really serve us well in terms of scoring high and getting approval from Housing Finance for tax credits. This property was zoned in 2003 to Town Center Commons PUD, which contemplated a mixed-use rezoning, which could have placed 3 buildings on this site. It could have included a 24-hour fast food restaurant with a drive-through, a 48-foot tall office building, and a small shopping center, all on this one small site. But that sounded like a good idea, but apparently was not feasible because this property has been zoned but not developed for the last 18 years. And now the town has changed the land use map designation to high density multifamily and commercial services, which tees this project up very well. First, I'd like to call on Tim Morgan of Evergreen to just tell you a little bit about his company and the type of developments that they do. Tim?
Thank you, Isabel. Good evening. My name is Tim Morgan with Evergreen Construction. We're located on Six Forks Road in Raleigh. Evergreen was established in 1978 and specializes in developing, building, and managing affordable housing communities across North Carolina. We currently have 46 communities in our portfolio, which is just over 2,000 units, and over half our portfolio is senior housing. And so what you have in front of you is exterior shot of a senior development we did in Raleigh called Pointer Spring. As you can see, it's a 3-story development. You move into the inside foyer entrance to the facility. Next, please. This is a exterior shot of a senior community we developed in Pittsboro in a PUD. Right across the street from it are several 2-story single-family residences. Next, please. Again, this is what you see as you come in through the entrance. This is the lobby area. This is a computer room that we have in all of our senior developments. This is an entertainment TV lounge that we have in all of our developments. There's centralized mail kiosk. And then if you can go to slide 12, please. Yeah. And these are the exterior elevations of what we hope to be able to do in Apex. I just want to share our typical resident profile is someone who is 67 years of age, single, female with about 20 to 22,000 in income, which consists of Social Security and a small pension. About 75% of our residents have a car. So as we know, we are seeking rezoning tonight in hopes of being able to offer an affordable rental housing option for seniors that does not currently exist in Apex. Isabel, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you. And as you can see from those slides, Evergreen does a really high quality job. Next, I know that we will be coming back to you for quasi-judicial approval for a major site plan. So I don't want to run afoul of any ex parte rules, but we do have a preliminary development plan, and I'd like to call on our engineer, Rick Baker, to tell you about some of the engineering challenges he has met on this property. Rick?
Thank you, Isabel. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Rick Baker with the Timmons Group, and we developed this conceptual plan to share our vision of what we think can happen or how we can develop this property. There are several constraints, one being the stream and buffer on the south side of the property plan, southeast right there, and also maintaining the buffers around the perimeter of the site as the previous PUD had, the Amherst and Glen Arbor, as well as the Walgreens and West William Street. And then with trying to keep as much parking as close to the building as possible due to our senior residents, it presented some challenges to us to get a development we think will both be good for the town and good for the residents. Back over to you, Isabel.
Yeah, and I want to add one more thing. There is a fixed vehicular cross access between the Walgreens site, as you can see, just in front of the building. So, and that drives the placement of the building as well. So I also wanted to go through a few neighbor issues. We've had many comments and requests from the neighbors. We had 2 lengthy Zoom calls last week and have made numerous changes to the case, including we have committed that we already had a commitment that 80% of our residents would be 55 and older, but now we've also gone further to say no permanent residents will be under 45 years old. Liz told you about the several lighting conditions we've added. We've required the stairwells to be fully enclosed. We've required soft close exterior doors. We've prohibited cross access to Amherst and Glen Arbor at the neighborhood request. We've prohibited exterior ATMs. We prohibited drive-through window service. We've prohibited balconies on individual units other than Juliet balconies. We have stated that a trash dumpster must be located at least 60 feet from the Amherst neighborhood. We have prohibited playgrounds. We have specified a height limit of 3 stories with no underground or ground level parking, total of 48 feet, or 2 stories with underground or ground level parking, 48 feet. At present, we plan surface parking and we plan 3 stories, but it won't go for 48 feet, which is the same height requirement as the prior zoning, the existing zoning conditions. Maximum building square footage is 96,000. That'll be 3 32,000 foot stories. And the buffer, we have increased the setback against the Amherst to 40-foot buffer plus 15-foot setback from building and vehicular surface areas. And we will use plantings to achieve the opaque buffer along the Amherst line rather than a solid wood fence at their request. Also wanted to briefly mention traffic, and if you can pull up the traffic study slide, which I think is next. You can see on the top, we have the senior adult housing. And you can see the total trips the whole day of 312 trips. And if you compare that to the combination of uses, and all of these uses would be permitted on this site, you would get 835 from a medical office, 966 from a shopping center, and a fast food restaurant of 1413. So that's a significant, about 10 times the number of trips that would be generated could be generated under the current entitlement versus our 312. So we're proposing a use that will drive way less traffic. So in conclusion, we do think this proposal is reasonable in the public interest for a number of reasons. First, the town of Apex, like many communities, desperately needs new affordable housing, and in particular senior housing, to help our vulnerable populations deal with the rapidly increasing cost of housing. This is a particularly good site for this use because of its close proximity to pharmacy, grocery stores, medical resources, and transit. We are providing good buffers and have made many other concessions to the adjacent neighbors. The request is consistent with the 2045 land use map, the transportation plan, the affordable housing plan. The approved 2003 zoning did not lead to any development despite several attempts. This proposal will generate far less traffic and maintain the same or greater buffers, setbacks, greater RCA, the same maximum height as the 2003 plan. We will also be providing shelter amenities for a transit stop. And with that, I will turn it back over to staff, and thank you for your attention. We're available for any questions.
All right, thank you very much for that presentation. Any questions from council? All right, Mayor Pro Tem Dozier.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a couple of questions. Some might be for staff and some for the applicant. Wanted to clarify, just to give you a history, that I was around for the original advocacy from the neighbors around the original applicant to this piece of land property. So my question is, I guess maybe for staff, is it looks like, let's say if something happens and this does not go through, that, and I hope that's not the case, but that the other uses that Ms. Maddox mentioned, it sounds like that those uses could not be uses, that it would have to be consistent with what we're doing this evening. And I hope that's the case, that we would have to seek out this type of property project. Is that correct?
To answer your question, yes, that is correct. The only use is senior apartment for this site. So all the other uses from the old PUD are it would have to come back for rezoning.
Okay,
They
that's
wanted
great.
to do something
Right,
else.
thank you. Thank you. My other question is related to a little bit in the weeds of this, but I understand that is related to people who are able to live there. We're talking about active adults, typically 55 and up are allowed. Understand what your average age is, but if we do have more people that are 55 and up, they typically are still working, typically have transportation. And I know sometimes when people talk about people who have low incomes, people tend to talk about transportation. People still have cars. So I worry about that related to the parking spaces. I want to make sure that we think about that. But also it mentions that a companion is allowed that's younger than 55, but it had a cap or bar of 45 years old. Is that correct? So if you have a spouse who is 42, your companion cannot live there, or is that the third person?
That's correct. Unfortunately, we've agreed to no permanent residents less than 45.
Okay, so that means that we are seeking out to be more inclusive of people who have lower incomes, of people who are in advanced age, but that if they have a spouse that's 10 years younger than them, under 45, they can't be there. I think that's a little concerning to me. I hope that we can address that in some way. And the other thing I would say related to COVID, there could be a situation where a family member may need to be there for help temporarily. There could be adult child who's coming back from the military or some other place where they've been out of town. And so, is there any grace for someone who is also in poverty who's in that person's family? So those are just a couple of my things there.
We do say permanent residence, so it wouldn't preclude someone staying temporarily there. But the neighbors were fairly insistent on this point. They were concerned with, younger people living there. And
So someone at 44 years old is a concern. Like, I think we need to think about the whole, there are people who marry people who are more than 10 years younger. And that's the only thing I'm concerned about. I think a companion, I think that's a little bit much.
Ms. Dozier, I understand. And the other federal definition is all persons must be 62 years of age or older. That's a very, very restrictive definition. We're going with the less stringent one. But I will say the 45 limitation we have done at our other senior communities. And I realize there's always going to be winners and losers at no matter what age you set, unless you set it real low. But again, out of a abundance of concern that it not become a younger person property, that's where that comes from now.
Yeah, I'm not concerned about that. I understand about age restricted. I'm just saying that if you have a companion who is 44 in 6 months.
Yeah, then you're right. They would have to wait until that companion turned 45 to be eligible. Yes, ma'am.
So I wonder whether the neighbors really consider that. So I look at things that way. So.
Sure. Thank you.
Very good points, Mayor Pro Tem. Thank you. Council Member Killisworth.
I want to say that I have been very happy about the responsiveness of the people working on this project to the neighbors beside them to address the concerns. It's very good when you see that relationship happening and you see the responsiveness happening. I would say that I would agree with Mayor Pro Tem Dozier about the age restriction, the lower end of that. I would like to see that removed because, there are relationships. My husband is, 15 years older than me. So, to me, there's no reason for that type of lower restriction. When we have so many other restrictions on this, barriers to entry for this as well. So I would agree with your concerns on that.
Thank you so much. Councilmember Gant.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess this is a question for Mr. Well, I have two, one for staff, one for the applicant. So I'll do the applicant one first. So Mr. Morgan, I viewed the planning board meeting and noticed the opposition about the pedestrian access to the Glen Arbor townhomes, and was concerned about that mainly because I think their opposition to the project, what I heard was their opposition to the project made them want to kind of, they didn't want this pedestrian crossing because of their opposition to the project. But I was doing some playing around with maps, and a pedestrian access would shorten their walk to Walgreens, shorten their walk to the post office, shorten their walk to JC Park by about a quarter mile. And almost all the benefits of a pedestrian access accrue, maybe 90% of it go to them, not even the residents of this development. So I'm frustrated by by that condition about not seeking pedestrian access, because I think that once this is built, they're going to want that, and they're going to regret fighting this pedestrian access. And the future residents of that neighborhood are going to be like, why is there not a connection here? And it will be a frustration to them, and I'm disappointed in that. So I want to put that out there. And I don't know if they're watching and they think about, okay, if this goes through, we really are going to want that. And I'm wondering if there can be some kind of negotiation the next few days before our vote. But I mean, I understand that they expressed the opinion they didn't want it. So that's a comment. The question I have is for Ms. Lofton, was related to stormwater. We heard a lot about stormwater concerns on this site. And my understanding is that if there is a combined stormwater control measure on this site, it will effectively capture the 25-year storm, which we increased a few years ago, for both parcels. Is that correct? Not only this parcel, but the Walgreens parcel as well.
Yes, and I also have Jessica Bolin from our stormwater department on the call and can answer any stormwater related questions, since her department would be reviewing it. But that is my understanding.
Yes, and you are right, Brett. I can echo that. It's the 25-year storm would be required for both parcels, because both are in the upper Beaver Creek Basin.
Right, and I guess a follow-up is, I didn't quite understand from the current conditions of the site whether that pond on the site is actually a stormwater control measure currently for the Walgreens. And I guess my question is stormwater actually being controlled from the Walgreens site at this point? And will that combined stormwater control measure for the 25-year storm, will that actually reduce the runoff currently occurring from the Walgreens site?
It should, by calculation. Yeah, right now there is a pond there that's attenuating the 1-year storm and the 10-year storm, which is what was in place at the time that Walgreens was developed. So if that pond goes away and they do something more regional with both parcels and it controls up to the 25-year storm, there should be additional attenuation that's not there now.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Councilman Mahaffey.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to take a moment to thank Ms. Maddox and Mr. Baker and the whole team working on this. I've, over the past couple weeks, since it's been proposed, it's been amazing what you guys have done and how you worked with the community. I think it's been extremely impressive. I haven't been here too long, I guess. I've been here like a year or so, but this is probably the best example of a collaboration between a development project and a community that I've seen. And for that matter, I also, want to thank the community for working with you and being open-minded and proposing conditions and the process that I've seen. I actually got an email, a couple today, from community members who were opposed to the project coming back and saying they now support it, which blew me away. I've never actually seen that before, where a community so opposed to something talked to the developer and they worked it out and they came back with the proposal they agreed on. I agree with some of the concerns that my colleagues have stated here with regards to the details, but I'm so happy that we've come to a point where there's not that much space between the surrounding neighbors and the development. So thank you for working so hard and getting to this point. I do want to reiterate again what Councilmember Gant just said about the stormwater is I have every confidence in kind of the technology and the science and where we are and the strength of our stormwater requirements in the UDO. This is something that comes up pretty much every rezoning. People are concerned, and they should be, about stormwater runoff and what that means for them. But like I was saying, I have full confidence in the requirements that we have in place to actually not only mitigate, but actually reduce in many cases the runoff as we see here. People don't believe it till they see it, but if you have problems and development comes by next to you, it usually is actually in your interest to get it developed, because the mitigations that we can do in 2021 versus what you'd see in the year 2000, it's night and day. So I don't have a question. Just thank you again for all your work on this, and I'll be supporting this project.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilmember Stallings.
Thank you. And I just want to echo Councilmember Mahaffey's comments briefly. I have been on visits. I have been copied on what feels like a lot of emails through this process. And I just really appreciate all the work that the applicant has done, all that the community members have done, most to stay engaged with each other, to not give up on each other, to not give up on this project. And I just appreciate the collaborative effort. I'm fine if you want to continue to try to work and tweak these last couple of details. Either way is fine in terms of the age, in terms of the pedestrian crossing. I will leave that to you all. But I just want to say thank you for staying engaged. It's and like Mr. Mahaffey said, residents who were opposed, I'm getting emails now that they support and appreciate the work that you all have done. So thank you for that.
All right, thank you, Ms. Stallings. Councilman Mahaffey. Have additional.
Sorry, Mayor. I just had one other thought regarding that crossing, or the pedestrian access point. I was wondering if we have a couple days to iterate on that, if it would be acceptable to the neighbors, if you're going to speak to them again, to maybe have that agreed not to be part of the site plan, but maybe not written in stone as a zoning condition. If that would be acceptable to them, I would. I think that might be something we could talk about. That way, they would still, in the short term that they don't desire, but maybe 10 years down the road, they might want to see if that could be added to give them a shorter access. And if it's in the zoning condition, it's effectively law and it can never be added. But if we, don't put it in there, then it's an option down the road. So it's not something I want to enforce, but it's just a suggestion if we're going to talk to the neighbors to maybe soften that a little bit in case they change their mind down the road. Because I agree with Councilmember Gant, like this pedestrian path is really for them, to give them easier access through the site to access some of the amenities on 55 there. So thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? All right, hearing none, we'll go ahead and open up public hearing for this item for public comment. My understanding, we have one recorded comment, and if IT could go ahead and play that now. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Phil Welch. I live at 1471 Big Leaf Loop in the Dogwood Ridge neighborhood, about a mile from the proposed site of Abbey Spring. I'm voicing my support for your approval of rezoning case number 21CZ02, the Abbey Spring PUD. Last year, I participated in the development of Apex's affordable housing plan as a steering committee member. The analysis performed by outside consultants highlighted the critical need for affordable homes in Apex. Seniors are one population whose needs are especially acute. A majority of residents understand and support the need for affordable homes. However, when these homes are proposed next to a specific neighborhood, opposition arises out of fear. Fear of strangers, fear of false images of affordable homes and their residents, and fear of change. You have a choice. You can use this opposition as a reason to reject this proposal, or you can identify valid concerns, ensure they're addressed, and move forward. I urge you to compare the overall benefits to the town versus the fears of the neighbors. The benefits are obvious. 84 new 1- and 2-bedroom apartments for seniors at affordable rents, $375 to $850 per month. These will be built and managed by the Evergreen Construction Company, which has years of experience. Since 1978, they've built 46 affordable developments, mostly in Wake County. They provide high-quality construction and effective management for long-term investment in the community. A couple of council persons have visited Evergreen's Ryan Spring Senior Community in Cary. Ryan Spring opened last February, filled in 5 months during the pandemic, and now has a waiting list. Residents at Abbey Spring would be quiet, low-traffic, long-term neighbors. The project could provide a potential long-term solution to stormwater management here. The location is excellent. It's next to the post office and Walgreens. There are many amenities, including grocery stores, shopping centers, doctor's offices, urgent care, emergency room, and downtown Apex within about a mile. It's also on the first transit route for Go Apex, set to launch later this year. In conclusion, I think this rezoning and proposed development is an ideal candidate to begin implementation of Apex's affordable housing plan. I urge your approval for rezoning. Your unanimous approval will provide the momentum needed for Wake County approval and a favorable evaluation by the NC Housing Finance Agency for the tax credits needed to achieve the affordable rents proposed. Thank you.
All right, thanks, John. Ms. Lofton, are there any email comments?
Yes. The first one is from Diana Londano at 601 Longston Hall Court. And she had 3 points to make within her letter. If the rezoning is approved, but the public funding not received, it may leave the property open for any development unrelated to affordable housing. Her second point was the presence of the stream in the property that runs downstream through Amherst neighborhood needs to be properly considered. And third, given the high difference in grading levels in the planned construction of a large impervious surface, the amount of water flowing through the stream will drastically increase, potentially causing flash flooding downstream during storm events, which will damage properties. Those were her main 3 kind of points from her letter. And then I've also been in correspondence with Jane Seeger at 605 Longton Hall Court, and she wanted to thank the developer for working with the neighbors, but she did have 2 points that she wanted to identify. She had asked that the dumpster be at 150 feet from all residents, which is currently in the PUD now. Evergreen has committed to at least 60 feet from Amherst. And then her second point was she asked for a 20-foot building and retaining wall setback from the buffers because of the increase in footprint. She asked that the council members to support her request, which she feels are reasonable considering the loss of current restrictions and protections under the existing PUD zoning. These conditional council conditions would offer safeguards to the existing residents, particularly in the event the parcel is rezoned and Evergreen does not develop the site. We also received several emails in support, which I feel Phil's voicemail summarizes most of those.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Lofton. All right, with that, we'll close the public hearing for comment, and this item will be moved to Thursday, March 25th, 9:00 a.m. council meeting for vote. With that, I can see faces. It's time to take a break, so we will take a quick break and come back at 8:35. Thank you. Okay. Members of council ready to move forward with public hearing number 7, and is presented tonight by Ms. Amanda Butts.
Good evening. We have one UDO amendment for you tonight related to variances from the standards of the watershed protection overlay districts. And it's related to when allowing a variance to occur regardless of when the property was purchased. The current standard requires that the Board of Adjustment find that the applicant did not purchase the property after the effective date of Section 6.1 and then request a variance. And so this is to allow things such as encroachments into a riparian buffer. And we have a situation where there are older neighborhoods that were established before the 6.1 was enacted with the riparian buffers. And any property owners in those neighborhoods that have owned since before that time can request an encroachment. But if they've purchased, any time after that date, which was the year 2000, they are not allowed to, because the Board of Adjustment has to make all of the findings listed in the UDO. And so we've had some situations recently where there have been property owners wanting to make improvements to their home and they're not able to request a variance. And in one situation, they're actually wanting to reduce the amount of impervious surface with the improvement that they want to do, but they're not allowed to do it, even though the state could permit it. So staff is recommending approval of this UDO amendment, and Planning Board heard this at their March 8th meeting, and they recommended approval as well. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Butts. Any questions from council? All right, hearing none. All right, so we'll go ahead and open up public hearing for this item now. Are there any emails, Ms. Butts?
We do have one.
Okay, all right.
It was received from Kristen and Grant Kane of 100 Talisker Court in Apex. My husband and I are requesting this council to vote to remove section 6.113 E2E of the UDO that states the applicant did not purchase the property after the effective date of section 6.1 and then request a variance. We bought our first home in 2017 in Cameron Park. We were so drawn to this house because of the neighborhood it was in, only half-mile where I grew up. The amount of natural light in the house and the potential it had to spruce up and become a more functional home for us, including adding a covered porch when we accumulated the funds necessary. We had no idea that the stream that ran against the back of our property would one day prevent our plans from fruition, because we are currently unable to request a variance due to this section. We believe the standard is unfair because it leaves inconsistent rules within the neighborhood and town. For example, our next door neighbor could have owned their house since it was built and be able to request a variance without issue for the same covered porch project we want to complete, but we cannot. We are halted in our tracks. We do not see the benefit of having inconsistencies within our neighborhood or town. Also, as first-time homeowners, questions about the future come up, such as, will we have difficulty selling our house in the future with this restriction? Or does it lessen the value of our home for a potential buyer? It might have deterred us from buying had we known we wouldn't be able to do any exterior building projects, since we knew when we bought the house that we wanted to add a covered porch eventually. We would like to request council to vote to remove this section so that we can finally have the opportunity to make the vision for our home into reality. That's the only comment received.
All right, thank you. With that, we'll close public forum for this item for public comment. And this will be moved to Thursday's meeting, March 25th, 9 a.m. for vote. Thank you so much. All right, we're going to go now to public forum. Unintentionally passed over that on the agenda. So my understanding, we do have 2 recorded comments for this evening. So John, if you could play those at this time. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Sure.
This public comment email was received from Michelle DePreta. The body of the email states that the public comment is from Maria De Jesus, who lives at 55 James Street, Apex. I am proud Apex is my home. I am grateful to be living in such a beautiful, culturally diverse town. My experience gave me the opportunity of connecting with Mayor Gilbert on 2 occasions in 2018 and 2019. If it were not for our women and men in our Apex Police Department and the mayor, I would not be alive today. I am a domestic violence survivor. The Apex Police, along with the mayor, instilled the proper tools so that I no longer view myself as a victim. My perpetrator was a habitual repeat offender of Caucasian descent. The Apex Police Department and the mayor taught me how to survive through their knowledge, wisdom, and leadership. They gave me all the strength and courage and taught me how to swim when I felt I was going to sink. I am forever grateful. Mayor Gilbert's leadership in being captain trickles throughout the Apex Police Department today. This deserves recognition. Like you, I am horrified in what has and continues to be alleged within our police department and in our community. This public misrepresentation only misleads the masses. The destructive manner in which you allow the media to spin stories only fosters an inaccurate portrayal of who we really are, for we are all one. Seeing and hearing continuous defamation of our town's character, along with derogatory perceptions, is appalling. The allegations that were broadcasted by all media platforms only embraces a horrible negative tone. It demoralizes a community as a whole unit. The consistent back and forth banter only incites and does not represent the truth of the peak. Residents request the mayor and town council to publicly release all evidence with facts from all assessment reports. I am seeking our officials to publicly provide just what caused. Apex needs proof. The residents want to hear from those that claim racial injustices took place as noted in reports. We need the who, what, when, and why. The community needs the truth. The residents will take the necessary steps of action to make sure that everyone who resides here from all walks of life be ensured they can trust and continue to be protected. We will never tolerate any harmful and dangerous narratives towards our police and all those that serve in our community. We seek fair due process. We will heal. All levels within our community need to give their undivided attention and focus to positively lift up a community. Working together as a whole creates a harmonious and prosperous environment. Apex is that role model, that leader. This public comment is from Kathy and Frank Cheney, who live at 202 Pearson Street, Apex. We are 100% for the Eco Park project. With the explosion of growth throughout Wake County, it is even more critical to seize an opportunity to obtain and preserve green space and embrace nature.
That is all.
All right, thank you, John. With that, we'll close public forum. And I do want to actually indicate to all those that are tuning in, we don't typically respond to public forum as council. And if there are any requests, the staff will respond, and also the mayor if requested. So we'll move forward now to new business 1. Possible motion to provide financial support to Evergreen Construction Company for the affordable housing project at Abbey Spring in the form of grant from the Affordable Housing for recreation fees in lieu and loan of construction contingent upon final approval. And this is Assistant Town Manager Sean Purvis.
Yes. Good evening, Mayor and members of City Council. And actually, to keep this kind of short for this item, I'd actually ask that you continue this to your Thursday meeting, as it follows what you've already heard under your public hearings, and it really doesn't make sense to vote on it until you've made your decision on the public hearings. So with that, just ask to continue until Thursday morning.
Okay, is there anyone opposed? Sorry. Councilmember Mahaffey, go ahead.
I was going to make a motion to continue to Thursday.
Great, thank you. I'll start the motion. Is there a second?
Dozier, second.
All right, I got Mayor Pro Tem Dozier with a second. All right. Any discussion on it? If not, we'll go ahead and take a vote on that. All in favor indicate by saying aye, opposed no. Mayor Pro Tem Dozier.
Aye.
Councilmember Killingsworth.
Aye.
Councilmember Gant.
Aye.
Councilmember Stallings.
Aye.
And Councilmember Mahaffey.
Aye.
All right, that's unanimous. Motion carries to continue to Thursday. All right, new business number 2. And this is possible motion to approve a development agreement with the Crown Companies, LLC, and to authorize the town manager to execute the same. And that is Director Joanna Helms.
Good evening, Mayor and Town Council. In 2017, the town and the property owner of Cache Corporate Center entered into an agreement to co-develop a 121.3 acre site for the purpose of industrial and/or commercial recruitment and to increase the business prospects for the town. The current agreement states that the owner of the site has the option to release and sell all or portions of the property if the business or entity purchasing meets certain criteria of an acceptable business. The owner would be responsible to pay the town a pro rata share of the development costs incurred to date by the town and a portion of the equity in the property. The town has been working with a potential developer that proposes to purchase the remaining available property at Cache Corporate Center, which is about 83 acres, with the intent to construct speculative buildings and/or pad-ready sites to expedite the location of new business and industry at the site. Approving this new development agreement with the Crown Companies LLC would release the parties from the original agreement and would enhance the town's position to attract new business and industry and jobs. I believe Town Council received just recently the development agreement for review. And I also just wanted to state that staff has been working diligently with the Economic Development Committee to keep them abreast of our progress and negotiations. And we have received their guidance and support in this endeavor. Be happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you, Mrs. Helms. Any questions? Councilmember Mahaffey, go ahead.
So basically, this is wrapping up the Cache Corporate Center. We're saying it's all sold. We're done.
Yes and no. So we have two projects that are pending projects, which are actually a company location that are looking to locate there. We refer to those as Project Delta and Project Protein. And then this would be a new entity that would come in and act as the owner, if you will. So it would release the Cache family, Jack One LLC, from being the owner of the remaining property. And this would be a new owner of the property. And we would then partner with them as we have the current owner to continue to attract new business and industry to the site.
But the big shift is rather than having a shovel-ready site, they're going to build some buildings and they're going to try to get tenants to come in and rent from them.
Correct. One of their business models is to actually go ahead and stand up some speculative buildings, kind of one at a time, if you will. And we have many projects in the hopper that are chomping at the bit to locate there.
I see. So it seems like a shift in focus from what we were trying to go for earlier, right? With there might be smaller fish coming in if you got a building that you're going to parcel out.
Well, so again, we have about 83 acres remaining, so that's already, less than the 121. But the type of companies and the integrity of the development are still intact with what the town and our economic development goals are.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilmember Killersworth.
So I know that from your previous reports, Director Helms, you were talking about how many people and companies are looking for already completed buildings. And so basically this is meeting that objective of providing some buildings that are already ready to be fitted for whatever purpose. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So yeah, it does seem like it's a little bit of shift to focus, but still meeting the needs of companies that are contacting the town of Apex saying, we're looking for sites. we don't see any that are what we want, are not big enough, or vice versa. So
correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Good points. Thank you. Councilman Mahaffey.
Yeah, just to follow up, thinking about this some more. Would it be fair to this site is just south of Pinnacle Park, right?
Correct.
So would it be fair to say what we're kind of doing here is shifting the focus a bit from having a shovel-ready site where someone can move in and build their building shifting kind of towards more of a model like Pinnacle Park, where you have buildings that you're going to lease or rent from?
Yes and no. The minimum lot size at Cash Corporate Center is 10 acres. So that's different than what was available at Pinnacle Park, where you could have much smaller sites. The buildings that Crown Companies is looking to construct are quite large. They're 100,000+ square feet. And so that will look and feel and align with what we had as our goal for that site. So really what they're proposing is in line with our goals for that site. It's just that instead of having the raw land available for sale, we're going to have buildings readily available for easier move in and quicker deal transaction, but still with the same type of focus on IT, life sciences, those types of companies.
And these buildings will be single use, like a single tenant, and not like subdivided up into.
They can be subdivided up, but only so much. So it won't be like multi-tenant buildings. It might be 1 or 2 tenants.
All right. Well, thank you for all the work you guys have put in this. It feels kind of bittersweet here. Like we're closing the, having like a goodbye party to Cash Corporate site. We're not going to hear about these new projects coming through anymore. It's kind of weird. Been hearing about this for so long. I'm curious as to what's next for economic development in Apex. And, I guess that's more a question for the committee, and we'll hear about that in the future. But it's kind of like we're turning the page here on something.
Well, I'll just say real quickly, don't feel sad, because we're going to have your foot on a shovel very regularly here soon. So you'll be excited about that. And we'll be coming back to you with some more opportunities for future sites for industrial development.
Great, thank you.
She took the words right out of my mouth. So it's time to turn the page to celebration. So Councilwoman Stallings, go ahead.
Yeah, I would just like to do a shout out to staff. Mayor Gilbert and I serve on the economic development team, and staff has been working really, really hard and burning the midnight oil and the weekend oil at times to really move things along, because we've had a lot of interest from the business community, and I'm excited about it. And I just want to give a shout out to staff for all you've done to bring these issues forward. So thank you all.
And I would agree with Councilwoman Stallings. Thank you for all your work. It's been a lot to do, and you got to stay focused. So thank you for everything. So with that, if there are no other questions or comments, is there a motion to approve?
Make a motion to approve, Mahaffey.
All right, motion to approve, Mahaffey.
Second, Killingsworth.
Second, Killingsworth. Discussion. All right, all in favor indicate by saying aye, opposed no. Mayor Pro Tem Dozier.
Aye.
All right, Councilmember Killingsworth.
Aye.
Councilmember Gant.
Aye.
Councilmember Stallings.
Aye.
Councilmember Mahaffey.
Aye.
All right, that passed unanimously. Thank you so much, staff.
Thank you, Mayor and Town Council.
All right. Okay, we'll move now to the final agenda item, new business 3, possible motion to terminate an existing access easement. Ms. Diane Kent.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, Council. Thank you so much for adding this to your agenda. We just found out about this at about 4 o'clock this afternoon, and so they are trying to close next week. And when they do close on 6 parcels at the park at Wimberley, we will be set up to get the land dedication for Public Safety Station number 6. So just to orient you to the site, Wimberley Road's in our northwest quadrant of our town. And it is located across the street from the water treatment plant that we share with Cary. This is the park at Wimberley, and this portion of the park at Wimberley is where Public Safety Station 6 will be located. And so, again, this is where Public Safety Station 6 will be. All the properties shown here in yellow are town park properties. And the easement that we're talking about actually comes up in this direction into the park property. So I'll just show you where this arrow is pointing. This is the old plat, Book of Maps, 1987, page 2038. That it was an easement that was granted in favor of Lorraine Mills back in 1993. And when the town bought the property in 2017, it conveyed over to the town. So we do now have access directly from Wimberley Road. And then I want to go down a couple slides here. Give this to go. And then this is the park at Wimberley subdivision, and we do have a greenway easement that connects through here for pedestrian connectivity from the subdivision to the park. And so there would not be a need for the easement that basically goes in this direction. You know, when the subdivision's there, we wouldn't be able to use it anyway. And so they are requesting a termination of the easement, and that's so that they can close on the property next week. And I don't know if Lori, if you had anything to add at all.
No, I think you covered that very well.
Okay. All right. I haven't done one of these before.
And you did it on short notice too.
Yes. So staff does recommend that the termination be approved, and then Lori will work with their attorney, Brian Sutliff, to finalize the paperwork for that. But I think a vote is needed in order to authorize the town manager to sign. Is that?
Yeah, that's what we'd like to do, is have the town manager authorized to sign.
Okay, thank you very much. Councilman Mahaffey.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, everyone. This is kind of interesting. How do we even find out the easements that are on a given property? Like, I'm looking at the GIS. The county has GIS there where they, you know, the Wake Eye maps, and I don't see it listed there. Do you have to go to the Register of Deeds and dive into the book and look to see every single one recorded in the past 100 years?
Yes, this is why you hire an attorney to do a closing for you when you purchase a piece of real estate. So the property, the developers of the adjacent property are trying to close next week, and through the title research, the attorneys found the easement that is located on their property, and the title company actually is the one who is asking them to have the easement terminated.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? All right, with that, is there a motion to approve? Councilmember Mahaffey.
Sure, thank you, Mayor. I move we authorize the town manager to enter an agreement to release this easement by future Public Safety Station 6.
And to terminate the easement.
And to terminate the easement.
Okay.
All right, thank you for your motion.
Second, Gant.
Second, Gant. Any further discussion on it? All right, hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye, opposed no. Mayor Pro Tem Dozier.
Aye.
All right, Councilmember McKillensworth.
Aye.
All right, Councilmember Gant.
Aye.
Councilmember Stallings.
Aye.
All right, and Councilmember Mahaffey.
Aye.
All right, that passed unanimously. Thank you so much. Mr. Clark.
Yes, sir.
Do you have any updates tonight?
Well, I do have a little bit of a couple of little things. We've been working on a plan to get our employees back to work or to return from the virus activities. And the park committee has developed a plan to bring our employees back July 1. And we chose July 1 to allow the employees time to make personal preparations for childcare or other accommodations. Also, some of our employees have children who are doing virtual learning and it will continue through the year. So it lets them get that done and get through the school year. And also it gives them ample time for each of our employees, if they so choose, to receive the vaccination. We're not requiring the vaccinations to come back to work, but they will be expected to return, whether they have it or not, on July 1. And we are encouraging our employees to do this, and they are available to us. The mask, we are still continuing to follow the CDC guidelines on mask. And our directors will be creating some plan on, since we found working at home works in some respects, and it's some real benefits, trying to iron out what things we can continue to do and how we're going to operate, what's going to be the new norm. So that's our plan of action for that. My next item is a little bit unusual. received the wastewater treatment plant. It's called the NPDES compliance inspection. And I tell you, I've been in local government for a long, long time, and I've never seen a report that's this good. And I just think that it's something that I felt like I ought to share with you, because the fact that, you know, it's really great to have employees who care enough to keep this plant, and there were no negative notes on the entire inspection. So that tells me something, and I've never seen this in my whole career. So I just want to share that with you. The next item I have is on the water flushing system, and I just try to bring you a little update there. That's going to continue through April, and what's happening is the way the water plant is, they go once a year to changing the chlorine from chloramines to chlorine, and then back to chloramines. And let's see, we talked about the November elections, and we've been meeting, and I think the mayors associations of Wake County have been meeting, and it appears to be a fairly consistent consensus that the November elections are what most want, and recognizing that Raleigh and Curie probably won't make it because of the fact that they rely on the census data. But the discussions we're having today are the early voting, and it appears, you know, based on the conversation today, there are only 2 in Wake County that are even considering early voting, and of course one of them is us. The other is Garner, and we had a third one that was kind of marginal until they met last night and realized what the costs were going to be. And so Garner is asking for 5 days of early voting, and trying to interpret what you told me last meeting. You know, you were interested in getting at least a weekend through another weekend, and which would be about 10 days, somewhere thereabouts. And the thing that's I'm sure that's driving the others not to have any interest is, one, typically the lack of interest in early voting, and there's so few votes, and the cost that goes along with it. And they gave us a cost estimate today. If 3 of the municipals decide to do it, it would cost us $79,000 each to do that. We are waiting for some additional information. We're going to try to dig some up so you can at least feel like you've made an informed decision on what it is that we really want to do. I know you said you wanted to do, you know, the 2 weekends if possible, but, you know, trying to determine what you've achieved in the last, you know, typical municipal election, and so we can get some guidance, because we may be the only one in the county that does it if we stick with the 10 days, because Garner, you know, anything more than 5 days, they pretty much indicated they didn't have any interest, and everyone else has backed out. So that's something we're still working on, and I'll be getting with you soon. I've got one thing that's been tossed around. It was early on when I came here, was the Hack property, and it's still some conversation about the Hack property, and just want to let you know that we're continuing to work on that project as you instructed, and we're making a little progress. Hopefully, you know, we'll be able to give you some reporting very soon. And that pretty much concludes what I have. Yes, that concludes everything I have for tonight.
All right, Mr. Clark, thank you so much for that. Good updates. Anyone have any questions for Mr. Clark?
Mr. Clark, just clarify about the early voting thing and the number of days. My understanding is that everybody in the county has to do the same thing. So if one wants to do 5 and we want to do 10, everybody has to do 10. Is that kind of how it works in theory?
I'm not clear exactly on that. Prior to this election, see, Raleigh and Cary being the big municipals in the county pretty much drove the Wake County Board of Elections, you know, and whatever they said, the county basically said everybody had to do it. It appears that we could do, we could by ourselves do early voting, if I understand it correctly, without any other community in the Wake County. And I'm not sure what the difference between the Raleigh-Curie thing, what it makes other than, they're just the larger communities. So, those are things I have to learn about this because, in fact, I've never been forced where you had, the division that we've having. The one thing that we have been consistent on is that we all want to do a November election, and we prepared a joint letter to the legislature, and it's kind of consistent with the Mayor's Association of Wake County, saying that you want a November election. But I'll get more details as to what the deal is because they continue to say we can to do 2 or 3. It's just, it drives the cost up.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Stallings.
Did the conversation evolve enough, Mr. Clark, about Raleigh and Cary? I'm assuming they want early voting when the time comes for them, yes? Or did the conversation go that far?
Yeah, it didn't get that far because the fact that it's almost a certainty that their voting will end up in 2022. So they've been pretty much out of the picture through the whole conversation.
Okay, thank you.
All righty, anyone else? All right, I think we are good to go.
Right.
All right, so I'd say at 9 o'clock, we 7 minutes over, so we did well. All right.
Okay.
All right, good.
All right.
All right, well, meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone. And we'll see you Thursday at 9 a.m. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.